All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Go with the Flow. I'm your host, Folarin Okulaja. I have another very special guest in the building and an episode I'm very excited about. And I kind of just previewed this to you, but the reason I'm excited
Mhm.
about this is because you're a musician, you're an artist, and a lot of people probably know you for your music and your
Mhm.
art.
Mhm.
But I don't know how many people have had the opportunity to kind of hear you speak in this long form manner and just actually get to know who you are as a person.
Yeah, yeah.
And so this will be a perfect opportunity for, when you blow up,
And
people
they can refer to this,
they can always come back to us and be
Uh-huh.
like, "Oh
Uh-huh.
wow, so this is who he was at this point
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
before he made it big." But we have JJ in the building. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
JJ, aka Black Hibiscus,
Mhm.
which we
Mhm.
will get into. You're an artist, but before we even get there,
Mhm.
who are you? Where are you from? Kind of give the people the background.
Yeah, yeah. So, I'm JJ. I'm from Nigeria. I grew up in Lagos
Me too.
and oh, sick.
For how long?
I left when I was 13.
Okay, I left when I was
Um,
9. Nice.
word. Um, yeah, I mean, I was in Nigeria till then, came to the States for boarding school when I was 13. That was interesting. Rome, Georgia. Rural Georgia is like an
Okay.
interesting place for your first American experience.
My first American experience was in Cary, North Carolina, which is also a suburb in the
Mm,
South. So I
mhm.
get it. We probably
Yeah,
have
yeah.
similar experiences in that sense.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
What do you
Um,
remember the most ignorant questions you got? Because
I mean,
I still remember the most ignorant questions I got as a 9-year-old in Cary,
yeah,
North
no,
Carolina.
9-year-old is worse too, because like everyone around you is just really stupid.
And
Like,
they don't know any better. I
yeah,
don't because I
yeah.
reflect on it, and I don't even think they meant poorly, and
Yeah,
they had
yeah. Just had
malintentions.
no exposure to it. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
No, that definitely happened a lot for me too. But yeah, no, Rome, Georgia. It was cool though. I enjoyed high school. I did enjoy high school. I mean, growing up, I was very focused on like STEM stuff, and
Mhm.
like I wanted to be an engineer from when I was super young.
Was
Was really
that
into like
because of you, or was there any parental
yeah, no,
influence on you?
surprisingly because of me. I mean, my parents weren't like complaining about it, you know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? Like, but it's definitely I was just very interested in math, science, since I was a kid, and like electronics and stuff like that. So I wanted to be an engineer. Then during high school, at some point, I was still like really into STEM, but I found out about design because I'd also been into art, like drawing. And my roommate had seen a sketch that I did once of like a car. I was trying to draw a car, and he's like, "That's not good." I was like, "Damn!" Like, okay, I guess I gotta try and get better. And that led me down this like YouTube pipeline of like car sketching to like industrial design sketching, where it's like you can sketch like couches, plants, doors, like basically anything that can be made can be like designed, I guess. And that idea was really cool to me because I think that's what I had wanted with engineering, was just to create cool things. So I found out about design and then started looking more into that. And I already wanted to go to Georgia Tech for like engineering, but then they had a cool industrial design program as well, and there was a tech school. So like, you because with industrial design, it's like,
Check
you
the
know what
whole
I'm
box,
saying? It's
and it
like,
was in Georgia, so check
you
yeah.
know, like I could have gone the art school route, but my parents might have had, a couple questions if I went to art school. But yeah, I went to Georgia Tech, studied industrial design, and it was going well. I think I was pretty focused on that. And then COVID hit, and I just went home and like depression, you know.
Mhm.
Um, I think that was the longest I'd been. I went back home for COVID, and I was there for like 8 months, and that was the
Okay.
longest I'd been home since like leaving for boarding school. Um, but yeah, I think having that much time on my hands and like no friends in Nigeria anymore, it just like I had
Oh,
to lock
homeless,
in
and you
on.
you went back
Yeah,
to
I went all the way
Nigeria.
back. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, I
okay.
was in Lagos with my parents for all of COVID. But I just had a lot of time on my hands, and I decided to start making music.
Interesting. So the music making started for you in COVID. It
Yeah,
wasn't an
yeah.
earlier thing.
Hmm.
Interesting. I don't know why. Again, as I was planning these questions, I
Hmm.
assumed it was like, oh, you've been making music your whole life and have
No.
always been artistic.
Hmm.
Okay, interesting. So talk to me more about that. What made you, of all the, you're a creative person, you had all
Hmm.
these different interests in
Hmm.
design.
Hmm.
Why music? Why was that the thing that you turned to
Yeah, yeah.
during COVID?
I mean, I think I've always been very into music. Like since I was a kid, my parents were also really into music, and they put me on to like I grew up on a combination of Michael Jackson, R. Kelly, regrettably, and Fela Kuti. Um, and yeah, and they were just really into that. And my brother and I would like hang out in their room on the weekends, and we'd all just listen to music. And that really, I think that exposure, when I then decided to find my own like what kind of music I liked, was a really cool background.
Mhm.
And then in high school, like I had this roommate. He's from Japan, and he was like he's the biggest Beatles fan I've ever met. And I had no exposure to the Beatles before
Yeah.
coming to America. It's like not a thing in Nigeria.
Honestly, even in America, I'm like, who our
you know
age
what I'm
listens
saying?
to the Beatles
Yeah,
anyway?
yeah. But this kid was obsessed with the Beatles, and that got me into them. And I think from there, then I got into Pink Floyd and a lot of like the rock and psychedelic rock from 60s, 70s. And yeah, and it just kept expanding from that. And then I combined that, obviously, then finding hip hop as well. I think I was into hip hop a little when I was in Nigeria, but like not good hip hop.
Yeah.
Until I was like, when you're 13, there is no, so you can't be really into that good of hip hop. But I came here, got really into Kendrick Lamar, and then Frank Ocean as well, with the combination of like the psychedelic, but also the hip hop and electronic and like slow songs. And I think that when I found Frank Ocean, because of how, I guess, diverse his influences were,
Mhm.
that really resonated. And that's been one of my favorite artists since. But yeah, I think having that exposure to music in that way of like all these different points of reference from when I was a kid to like finding my own stuff that I liked through high school.
Yeah.
I think when I then, like, I've always been inspired by music. So when I had free time in my hands, it was like, what can I do with my time that's like going to be enjoyable
Yeah.
and that I could see myself like just doing for a while. And yeah, I was like, I decided to start making music. And I played the guitar a little when I was a kid.
Okay.
Like not very well, but just like simple
It's something,
chords,
yeah.
Easy stuff. And then over COVID, when I was like, okay, I want to make music, then I really took it seriously.
Gotcha. And you just mentioned a few different artists that were sort of not even necessarily the inspiration, just who you were listening to. When would you say you eventually developed your own distinct sound?
That's interesting. I feel like,
or are you still trying to develop your own?
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of the stuff I do, especially with the like Black Hibiscus artist idea,
Mhm.
a lot of it is about references and about like making references to the things I love. Because that's why I make music, because I love listening to music.
Mhm.
And so I'm almost like eternally like replicating stuff that I like in my own voice, right?
Yeah.
And I think the combination of like the different styles of influences that I'm drawing from, plus the fact that it's like my voice and only I have my, vocal cords and I sound the way that I do. I think having the control I do over the process with like writing, recording, playing all the chords, producing, like singing myself, like I think that allows me to infuse, even when I'm making so many references, to like still have a distinct voice.
Gotcha.
Within
So
that.
even taking one step back,
Mhm.
Black Hibiscus, how did you come up with that name?
That's a great question. I had a list that I was keeping for a while. Like when I started making music, it was like really bad. So I had a couple of months where I was like sending people stuff like, oh, what do you think? Give me feedback. And they just be like, yeah, it's good. Like keep going, I guess. Like, so I definitely wasn't ready to release music at that point. But I think I always kind of knew that I wanted that. So I'd been keeping a list since I started, and then eventually we got to Black Hibiscus, and then it just felt right.
So that was it. It just felt right. You had what? Do you remember some of the other names you had tried?
I honestly don't. They were like unremarkable. Black Hibiscus was like actually just the first okay one.
And I was thinking, is there any correlation to the book Purple Hibiscus, which is a popular Nigerian book?
Yeah.
Was there any connection there? Or not
I
really?
think that's honestly a really good question. I think subconsciously there was, because that was like a really big book in my childhood.
It's one of those books that like every Nigerian parent is like,
exactly.
It's one of those. So I was like, oh, it's okay. Black Hibiscus, Purple Hibiscus. You're putting your own spin on this Nigerian classic, maybe.
Yeah.
But okay, you just mentioned you were making music and initially it was bad. When, what particular point was this? Did you during COVID start then making your first song, or when did you actually make a first song and you're like, okay, this is something I want to keep doing?
Yeah. I mean, it was like during COVID, so it was like, I guess I went home around March in 2020, and then for 2 months I was just like seeing out this semester of school, and it was like the most miserable semester ever. And so the summer hit, and I was like, okay, I need to like do something.
Yeah.
And I decided I opened up GarageBand. So I have a friend Moe, one of my roommates as well. He does like my mixing and mastering now. But he's been making music since we were in high school. He was the first person I ever knew who had like any sort of Spotify credit on, or like any sort of thing that was out in the world that was like real.
You probably had like a SoundCloud too, probably.
Exactly. And I was like, damn, like that's really cool. And yeah, I hit him up when I was ready to make music. I was like, how should I go about this? How should I start? He recommended GarageBand, so I opened GarageBand, made my first beat. Honestly, I think production came relatively naturally. The first things that I produced, I think, sound decent. They sound okay. Singing though, that was the like, oh, like
Have you ever?
I'm gonna have to
Did you ever
learn.
used to sing historically?
No. Like as a child, like I did
So
not
no
know how to
choir,
sing.
not in the
No.
church, nothing.
Okay, no. I was in the school choir.
Okay.
But like everyone was, it was like the like year choir. Like,
Yeah.
everyone was in there. It was nothing special. But definitely like by the time I was like I had left for the US, like I don't know if I'd ever sung in anything for that entire time. So like my voice was just not good, not trained at all. Neither was my writing because I had such a STEM background, I used to read a lot as a kid and then I just stopped reading when I went to high school. And so I had to like relearn those two skills simultaneously. And I was just doing like vocal or like on the internet, there's these like vocal warm-ups that I just do. You just follow along every day. And I did that for like 3 months. And one day it was like, oh, that's not so bad anymore.
actually sound pretty good.
Uh-huh.
That's kind of cool though. Is the fact that, and I'll say that's the beauty of the internet.
Mhm.
Even you didn't have to go find some expensive classes or anything. You're
Exactly.
like, I want to sing. Here's some vocal lessons,
Exactly.
rehearsals that I can do to kind of help me hone my craft.
Mhm.
You have GarageBand. I don't know how much it costs, but it can't.
Oh, it's free. It comes with every laptop.
Boom, there you go. I probably have it on here too.
Uh-huh.
Exactly, and that's the beauty of things. Is if you have that drive and that motivations, the resources are out there to kind of go master your craft,
Yeah.
whatever that might be. So you said initially the singing was hard, writing was hard.
Mhm.
At this point, between all the different components of making music, whether it's
Mhm.
producing, playing instruments, singing, writing, which would you say you're the best at? Like, or not even the best at? What's your favorite part of the process? I guess.
I definitely think producing. I think I'm honestly starting to love writing and singing a lot more because I think I've been very focused on getting better. I think especially writing has been the weakest part of my music till date. And at first I kind of wasn't that concerned. Like I was all about the sounds, even the music that I listened to, I was focused on how does this sound and make me feel.
Yeah.
So lyrics were kind of secondary. But I think my approach now is like, if it can be good, it should be good. So if I'm going to write lyrics, like I want these to be the highest caliber that I know I can make them.
Yeah.
And so I've been working a lot on that, and it's becoming more fun now that I think I've improved. But I think producing has always been like from the get-go of making music. If I like playing instruments, maybe not the best, but making things sound good together and tell a story over like a 3, 4, 5, 6 minute song, that's been like the part that I really enjoy.
Even one thing you just mentioned there about the way that you listen to music, I'm always curious about more broadly if that's the way a lot of people feel. Because I'm the exact same way. When I listen to an album, I just care about like what makes me nod my head, what makes me feel good, what kind of just makes me sit there and kind of brings an emotion out of me. And lyrics are always secondary, maybe even tertiary at a lot of points.
Yeah.
And I know, I mean, when it comes to rap, a lot of people will say it should be flipped. Like you should be listening first for the lyrics and then
message,
figure everything else from there.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think as very simple example, Fireboy DML, he had an album come out like a week or two ago. And there's one song that he has on there with Labaja that's just like, it just makes me, the instrumentation, the vibes. It took me like 3 listens to be like, oh, this is like a love song. And then I loved it that much more. But the first listen was just, oh my God, this is such a vibe.
Yeah.
I want to play it.
Yeah.
And then eventually
you fall into the meat.
You fall into the meat, exactly. So what it kind of is your take on if there's a right or wrong way to kind of enjoy music? And when you're making your music, is there a way you want people to
interact with it? Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. I definitely don't think there's like a right or wrong way, right? But I definitely feel that sentiment of like when I hear something, I'm allowing my like ears to just hear. I don't want my mind to be overly focused and engaged. Because I think, especially since I make music now, when I hear something, it's kind of a worse experience for me because now I can say like, oh, they're doing this. I'm critiquing it. I'm picking it apart. I'm saying like, oh, I hear that. That's an interesting snare that they have there. Or, oh, I see they changed the snare to a rim shot in this minute. Or these chords, or they changed the chords in the bridge, and that makes me feel a different way. But like, I might break it down in a music theory of like, what did they change those chords to, and see how I can be stealing almost for like my approach.
Yeah, enhancing. Let's say
but I think it's like hearing. allowing myself to just step away from that headspace and just like hearing and feeling the music has always been like key to, especially the kind of music I want to make, because the music that connects with me is like if I hear it and feel it, and then I can like, again, like you're saying, like listen to it multiple times and fall into something deeper. That's longevity. And I think, especially in the music industry, like it's so competitive now. Everyone and their mother makes music.
Same with
And
podcasting. I feel the same way about this. Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's like if you want to stand out for any reason, I think longevity is like an absolute that you have to hit. And I think there's some people who are great at making things just sound good. And like, yeah, you can get a TikTok hit off of making a thing that's like, yeah, let's just all just shake our heads to this for 15 seconds and we're gonna have a great time, and that's that. And I scroll. But I think it's so hard to revisit something that like the dopamine hit just won't hit the same.
Yeah.
Like after you hear it like 10 times, it's like, okay, what else can I find in it? And if there's no other substance, it's gonna fall out of favor. And so I think music for me that connects has to do both. It's like you have to be able to catch me so I can feel it and feel good, and you have to then hook me into something deeper with that.
I agree. Or then it's forgettable, and I might listen for a day or two, and then
Exactly.
I don't come back to
Exactly.
it. Okay, so you mentioned, and now I'm going back to again the timeline of you with music. Go home for COVID. That's when you get into the music. You start making some songs. At what point? How soon into that process were you like, this is something I could actually be pretty good at, and I want to start taking this seriously? How many bad songs before you were like, oh, this one song this might do something?
That's a hard question. I feel like from the get-go, I knew I was going to be posting the music, or like I knew I was going to be an artist. I think I rarely invest myself for like the time it takes to get good at something if I don't see like I can do this and I can be great at this, and I could from the get-go I was taking it seriously. I don't think I was ever just having fun with it, and the process is fun for me, but it was like there is an end goal to me investing these hours to sit here and learn what an EQ is or what a compressor does or what all the details of the thing. I think that happened pretty instantly. As far as like when things started sounding good, I think it's always been hard for me to gauge like, oh, whether that's good or that's not good. I think especially at the start, I was making stuff. I was like, I think that's okay. And that's why I was sending stuff to all my friends being like, so like, what do you think? Like, is it any good? Like, and I think I waited for that positive response externally till I felt comfortable to like start posting things. But I think especially now that I've had a few years working at this, I definitely have a much more insular, like I can look at it myself and be like, it's there or it's not there. And I think because I've been focused on breaking the process down to more identifiable, like, okay, the mix is there, or the production is there, or the vocals here, maybe they need some work with it, and just being able to be that detailed, I can then break it down and tell myself, like, I understand now that's finished because it feels right, and I can break it down concretely, and it is right.
And so you probably went from at the start sending the music to a lot of people to kind of get that validation that this is good. You just mentioned that you at this point now know for yourself when something is good. But outside of yourself, do you have still like a maybe small group of people that you're running your music by? Or would you say it's more of a, honestly, I fuck with it, let me just put it out there?
I definitely think now there's people I send to. I mean, Dennis, obviously, my manager. He hears all the stuff. He hears a lot of stuff like while it's being made. And we have good conversations. My roommate Moye, since he's like very integral to the process, he's always like coming in and out of my room and bouncing ideas off. And the rest of the roommates, honestly, I think everyone in our house right now, I think they have good music taste.
Good music taste?
So we all just get together and just like talk about it sometimes.
And then a question that I love asking people who are creatives and who also just kind of put any sort of content into the world, which I always joke with my friends, like, I never consider myself a creative, but I have a fucking podcast. I am a creative.
Absolutely.
Was there ever any initial hesitation in putting your work out into the world because of either fear of judgment or criticism or just anything of that sort? What was that process like for you?
I straight up just didn't think about it. I think, and I kind of wish I did. I think me not thinking about it allowed me to just do stuff and move fast. And I think sometimes in the world, it's great to not have to think and to just like, oh yeah, I'm doing this. I'm going to put it out, and whatever the world gives me, it gives me. I think until like you were talking about earlier, the like discovering artists IRL video where stuff sort of got its first, that was just my first real exposure into the world and like getting a bunch of attention, you know. I think until that, I hadn't really considered like the longer larger scale like
Yeah.
repercussions of putting stuff out. But yeah, I'm happy I did it without thinking. I just went for it.
Yeah, that's about. I do think a lot of people get crippled by that anxiety,
Mhm,
and they just
mhm.
they will sit on stuff for so long without actually putting it
Yeah.
out. So although it is a little bit fearful, even for me, I'm not a. Again, I don't even know why I struggle to like again just even classify myself as a creative. I'm just
Mhm,
like I like to have these conversations and put them out into the world.
mhm,
I am also even a more private person to start with, and so that's why even
mhm,
when I was doing the podcast to start with, it was I don't tell a lot of people my business.
mhm,
I'm
mhm.
just like, I'm low key, will keep things to myself. But this is automatically a way that is putting a lot out into the world.
Yeah.
When you have very natural conversations, you start to speak about things that you might not necessarily tell people. And there was a little bit of a, do I want to put this out there? But at the end of the day, I'm confident in what I'm doing
Yeah. Yeah.
and the content of the podcast. So I was like, okay, fuck it. Let me just put
Yeah.
put
No,
stuff out into the world. But
I
okay, you
think that's
just
important.
mentioned the Washington Square Park video.
Mhm,
Perfect segue.
mm.
That video, it is the actually describe to people this viral video. I'll let you describe it.
Mhm, mhm. The I guess depending on who you are, you might have seen it on TikTok, Instagram,
It has
like
16.1 million views as of last night.
uh-huh, it's this guy who goes up to random people on the street and it's like, "Do you make music?" And he always gets a bunch of no's at the beginning of the video, and then some person be like, "Yeah." He's like, "What's your artist name?" And then what are like 5 artists that inspire you? And then they'll play a bit of the song at the end. And I'd been seeing this content for like a while. I think it'd been going on for a few months, and I was like, "Oh, that's really cool. Like, I wonder if that would ever happen to me one day. Like, that's crazy." And completely out of the blue, like I was on a date and we had just met, like literally like 2 seconds. And I think people think I'm exaggerating. It was like we had just met and it was like, "Hey, nice to meet you." And we started walking to find somewhere to sit.
Uh-huh.
And then he was like, "Do you make music?" I was like, "Whoa, whoa."
And she was actually like, yeah, he does.
Yeah. It would have been hilarious if she didn't know that I made music. I just went on this whole
I
like
was
other
curious
tangent.
about that. Yeah, so
Yeah. We had texted about it on. We met on
Okay,
Hinge.
okay.
Yeah. We texted about that. But yeah, I mean, and the video happened. I was like, whoa, that was like a lot. And I wasn't sure because I think there are a lot of like replicas, like people who do a similar style of video, but not like that
That
guy.
account, yeah.
So I was like, oh, maybe it was one of those. I was just like chill. We had a good evening, like went about our lives
Yeah.
the remainder of the time.
Was there a second
And then
date?
There was. The second date was the day they published the video.
That is hilarious.
Yeah. No, that was hilarious. I was just like, I was making music, I think, with Moya at the time, and then like my phone just starts buzzing. I'm like, I put it away because we're working, and then I see like 5 missed calls from Dennis. Like, what's going on? And he calls me. He's like, also, I didn't really tell anyone about. Like I had this encounter. I was like, if it comes to fruition, it comes. If it doesn't, it doesn't. He calls me. He's like, what? You're like, what? When did you do this? Like, what is this? Because the video was like going crazy viral after like a few minutes had been posted. Yeah, and the video just kept on growing. A lot of people messed with different parts of it. A lot of people, half the comments are talking about like there's this woman at the beginning of the video who's like, he's like, "Oh, do you make music?" She's like, "No," but she's very attractive, well dressed. People are like, "Yo, what's her at? Like, who is that?" Everyone's focused on that. Like, no one really cares about the music, you know. But yeah, I mean that video has been cool. Like a lot of attention came from it. Met a bunch of cool people. Had a lot more exposure to the music, and yeah, it was just nice to get to continue to do what I love to do, but like with a lot more support now.
Yeah, and recognition. Yeah, because it's literally the most viewed video on the page, and it's pinned on the page right now. And so I guess, yeah, I mean, you just answered that, but I'm always curious about when there is such a viral moment, how much that will actually translate for the subject in it. And it sounds like for you, there was actually something tangible that came off the back of that.
Definitely. I think I was lucky with that too. I think a lot of people who go on that, whether it's the timing, because maybe they haven't released music in a while, or they're not planning on releasing music in a while, it can always be kind of tricky. But the video was released like right as we were releasing the EP Fast Love. And so it was like the first song had come out, and then that video came out like 2 weeks later. In 2 weeks, we were dropping a song. So we were like promoting the hell out of that. Timing. And it was just like kept on going till the end of the year. So I think we were able to like really capitalize on that attention. But we're really lucky with that, yeah.
That's dope. Even just real quick on that, because I was scrolling through and looking at the rest of the videos on that page. Did you see the one that Joe Jonas was in?
Yeah, that was crazy.
That was hilarious. Yeah, he goes and has Joe Jonas. Joe Jonas, does he make any music? And Joe Jonas is like, no. Funny.
Yeah.
But okay, so perfect segue also to now you're individual bodies of work. So
Mhm,
first
mhm.
album you had was called End of the World.
Yeah.
Tell me about that project.
Yeah. I think that was one of the first things I had wanted to make when I started making music. I think I had this idea. I've loved the movie City of God for a long time. Like that was honestly one of the first quote unquote like good movies that I watched where it was like artistically like everyone sort of rates it in the movie world as like a great movie. And I checked it out when I was like 13. I instantly fell in love with it. And I've revisited it a bunch of times. And I wanted to make a project that was kind of centered around that, and specifically like the love triangle almost between three of the characters.
Okay.
And yeah, but I think I had hesitations because, and I always do this, and I do appreciate it, but it's like if I don't feel like I'm ready to tackle a project because I know I want it to be like a certain level of good, then I'll just hold off and I'll say I'll do something else for now and I'll work towards that. But I think that was the first thing I wanted to make. Before that, I made this EP and it was just kind of, it's not very good, but like I was like learning, I was doing a lot of learning. I think I learned a lot from it, and then I took a big break. I think it was like a year and a half till I posted new music, maybe even like 2 years. But I was just like learning and recrafting and figuring out how to make this good. Spent a lot of time on the album, and yeah, eventually put that out. I think that was while I was working on it, I was living with Moye and Rami in New York, because Moye and I also run an audio tech startup, and we were doing that full time. We're in this like NYU accelerator program, and doing that full time like 2 summers ago in New York. And Rami was like, I was working on the project. Rami came into my room. He heard one of the songs. He heard Basquiat actually. He's like, oh, this is like really cool. I played him the rest of the project. He really fucked with it. He's like, I have this friend who's working at RCA right now. His name is Dennis. You should definitely meet him. Just chat.
Right there. Shout out Dennis.
And yeah, and Dennis came over, played him some songs. Then we just had a chat about like what I wanted to be as an artist. And I was like, yeah, like I'm looking for a manager. Here are some artists, like numbers wise, where I feel like I could fit in and what I want to aim towards and all this. And I was like, yeah, I'm looking for a manager. He's like, shit, I'll do it. And I was like, he's like, if you're serious, like, I'll take you up on that. He's like, yeah.
The rest is history.
And that was that. We've been
yeah, Dennis, do you manage podcasters? I'm looking for a manager. But okay, and how were describe? So again, you said it was based off this movie, City of God, the Love Triangle. How would you describe your creative process specifically for like one specific body of work?
I think I like when things are very cohesive in that way, which is why I love, like, I 10 times over love albums than singles.
Like, I should have asked you a different question then for the segment at the end. I should have had you do five albums.
Yeah. But I think an album has the potential to tell a much deeper story than a single song does. Because then you can have multiple stories that aren't even connected to each other, but they get at something, an overarching theme or something deeper than the stories that you're telling, which I think is more powerful than just kind of laying it out in a single song. And so my approach with an album is like, what is that deeper thing that I want to be communicating here, or that I want to get across? And how can I lay that out with different songs that might not be about anything that's connected to each other? Like Basquiat, for example, is about the relationship between Basquiat and Andy Warhol. And I'm making it into like a love song almost. That's the way I'm singing and the lyrics and all that. But that's what it's about. And that's very disconnected from Lil Zay, which is about like a character from City of God. But thematically, they're like reaching at the same thing. And then sonically, I do my job to make sure that they exist in the same space, that they feel like they belong in the same project. So even though I'm telling two different stories, they mean something more together.
Some underlying connection between the two.
Yeah. And I think that for me is like finding burying meaning where you can is just fun for me.
Awesome.
So I really like that.
And off that album, Benny, that was the one song. Because if you saw a spike in your listenership over the last week and a half, that was me literally listening to everything on YouTube and Spotify. That was the one song off that album that I really loved. I loved a lot of the songs, but that was the one where I was like, okay, like the vibe, it starts off strong, and then you just stay into it. Because again, anything that's gonna make me nod my head is I vibe with.
Yeah.
And even when I was walking here on the subway, out of the apartment on the subway, I was listening to music, and it was just, it's just a good vibe. It's just a good, it's just a great vibe.
And thank you very much.
And then so the music, okay, to get into music videos really quickly. So you made a music video for Basquiat,
Mm-hmm.
and I see that you've made a bunch of videos for a bunch of your songs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Why is that something that's important for you to do? Because
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a lot of artists don't prioritize music videos
Yeah,
today
yeah,
like they used to back in the day.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think like artists don't prioritize it because it's kind of a bad investment. It's like if you
Explain that. I mean,
I think in today's landscape of the music industry, you could either spend, you know, $5 grand, $10 grand on a music video. Technically that's even a small budget. Like a lot of artists are spending a lot more, right, on a good music video. Let's say
yeah,
you're spending 20 grand, which is like around average, on a music video, and it's a long form thing that you get like 3 minutes. The problem is it's horizontal. Horizontal doesn't cut it on TikTok.
Mhm.
So maybe you can then clip that into vertical clips, but it's like it wasn't composed for the vertical. So now it's a bit of a different thing. You have to create other content that can go on your social media. Whereas if you took that 20 grand and invested it all in short form content, which is easier to produce, so you get a lot more for your buck, then you have more of a chance of going viral, right? If you just have a bunch of different TikTok ideas and you set them up and then one thing catches, perfect. That did more for you than this music video could have done, right?
yeah,
So I think numerically it makes more sense to do short form than a music video. But from an artistic standpoint, I think it's like a music video to me, that thing we're talking about with like adding meaning to a song
yeah.
by having another song on an album that like adds value to it or adds something that you couldn't have gotten by just that thing. I think music video does the same thing for me, where whatever the theme or the thing is I'm trying to communicate that I can't really say directly in words or with instruments, like a music video has the chance to like highlight that element of the story
Yeah.
and like allow someone to connect with that.
That is a great distinction. Honestly,
Mm.
that definitely is the answer because I
Mhm,
agree.
mhm,
When it comes to if you just want this song and the sound to hit as many people as possible,
mhm,
go viral,
mhm.
yes, invest in different types of content. But as far as actually enhancing the song and the project, music videos are just the perfect way to
Yeah,
do that. And
yeah.
honestly, even if it's not the most, because there are some music videos that are more artistic, but then there's like I think of a lot of rap songs where it's literally
Mhm.
just them at a like partying,
Yeah,
even shit
yeah,
like
yeah.
that. Like I like throwing that on at a pregame, just like
Absolutely.
watching
If
that.
it's
That
the
stuff
right,
gets
if it's the
if
right
it's
energy, it's the right, you
exactly
know? Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
So
yeah.
interesting. But again, if it comes down to budget and you need to pick either or,
Mhm,
fine, I
mhm.
guess do. Selfishly, I love music videos.
Uh-huh,
I'm
uh-huh.
still to the point where I'm even yesterday when I was my own process all the time.
Mhm,
I was looking at which of as I was going through the songs
mhm.
and the ones that had music videos, I wouldn't listen on Spotify. I would go watch it on YouTube because that is
Mm,
just a much better way. I want to fully understand what
yeah,
the messages that you're trying to
yeah,
put out there, and so I just hope it doesn't become a dying form of
yeah,
art
yeah.
because people are
I mean, I think there are people who are in it that will always love it for the art form. Like personally, I will continue to make music videos
please do.
as long as I'm able to, you know, because it is really an important form. I think also like for me at least, I want to get into filmmaking. That's my latest new obsession. I
Okay.
always get these little, you know, these obsessions as time passes, and I think I've been doing music for a while and I'm settling into that. And I've always loved film, you know, since I was a kid. So now I want to make movies, and I've been trying to learn like what are the ways I can get into that. And I started like writing screenplays and like the music videos. I'm lucky, like people just hand me here's a bunch of cash, like go make a music video, and I get to like use that to practice my directing chops.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of fun.
Which I mean, two things based off of that. A lot of your songs that I was listening to, I was like, this would
Mhm.
work amazing in a movie or a TV
Mm,
show. So I definitely
mm,
see that kind of
mhm,
connection happening
mhm,
down the road.
mhm,
And then secondly, as far as and you just touched on this a little bit, the
mhm,
actual creative process behind some of the music videos, how collaborative of a process is that? Or
mhm,
is it you
mhm,
just kind of have this one vision and
mhm.
you kind of get the people to help you execute that?
I think it's varied a lot. At the start, it was very much like that. I mean, that first music video was technically directed by Dennis. It was him, and then Holden had a camera, and we were. It was like 2 weeks after meeting Dennis, and he was like, "Yeah, no, I'll be your manager." We were in Martha's Vineyard, like he was chilling with his family, and he's like, "Oh, you just pull up and." We get to like use. There's all sorts of beautiful scenery. You can get a bunch of like videos, content, whatever.
Mhm.
So we just shot that video, just random. We just drove around. It's like, oh, that looks cool. Like let's get some of that, and I'll sing the song there. And I think at that point I wasn't very involved. I was just kind of along for the ride. It's like, oh yeah, like this is cool, making music video. And then by the time Fast Love happened, it was me, Dennis, and Ramel would like sit in Dennis's apartment, come up with the ideas, and then Ramel was directing and producing. And then on the last song, Fast Love, I really wanted to like, that's when I was getting into this, like, oh, I could do film seriously. So I was like, oh, let me co-direct and just kind of shadow him almost. He was mostly directing. I was kind of like with him in the process and giving my input and figuring out like how he's communicating and even just the language on set, because there's a whole different way of speaking because of efficiency, right? It's like you have 3 hours in this location, you have to be able to speak in a shorthand and communicate very quickly.
Reminds me of The Bear and seeing them operate in the kitchen. Behind hands,
exactly,
all that shit.
exactly. All sorts of little details like that. So I was just kind of learning that on that video, and then because I knew that by this project with Growing Pains that's coming out now, I wanted to be able to direct all the videos.
Ooh, so there's another project coming out. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll talk about that.
We've been rolling out.
Okay, I love it. This will be part of the. I will clip this perfectly.
Phenomenal.
Okay, well, another one. So Fast Love, you mentioned that one. Talk about that as a body of work, as an EP.
That one was, I think, similarly to that like previous EP I had done. It was me knowing my next step and saying like, I'm not there yet. I need to like practice with some other thing. I think it's a cool project aesthetically that I enjoy, where I was like, More Than Friends is like 80s inspired. And then Infatuation has 808s, like more hip-hop, more bouncy, almost like poppy almost. And then You, Me and Her, 70s psychedelic stuff going on.
Another one of my favorite songs.
And then Fast Love is like more relaxed, like soft rock kind of thing. And I think on that one, it's a very simple story. It's just like the past relationship I had and kind of going from being more than friends to being infatuated with someone to like, exploring things with them. And then Fast Love, which is like an overview, almost like a memory of the love that we shared. And I think it's like pretty simple. I'm not doing too much of the reaching at something deeper with that project. But it was very much for me about like sharpening my skills and like getting things to sound how they were in my head. And I think it was definitely good for that.
Okay, and now Growing Pains, that's one you just mentioned. What is the timeline for that?
Growing Pains, the full album comes out October 18th.
October 18th.
We released 2 singles so far, so Tension and Don't Want to Miss You, which are the 2 music videos I directed. And then Forlorn comes out October 4th, and then Full Thing October 18th.
Okay, and for that project, kind of what's the story behind that one, and what do you want people to know ahead of time before it comes out?
Ahead of time, it's like I can't get spoilers. I think that that project is pretty like self-explanatory, in that like Growing Pains, it's like I've been out of college now for a year, and I've had like my first full year of being a real person, and like having no ground underneath me and having to figure things out, and like who am I and what do I stand for, and all these grander questions about growing up. And the hardships that come with that whenever there's that level of like self-reflection and trying to find identity. And the project is kind of about that in different songs, and about my personal growth experience. So I guess I hope people can relate to that.
Dope. And is it most of the way done, or you still have some work to do?
It's done.
It's done. Okay.
It's ready to go.
I'm always curious about that. Honestly, now that I have you here, and I think about this with, actually, as I was saying it, I was like, I think I answered my own question, because I think about how some movies get completed so far in advance, but then the answer is marketing. You're trying to promo for a long time.
Exactly.
I was gonna ask why the long drop. I answered my own question. You got to market and promo.
I mean, it's strange though. It's strange because I think different industries or like different genres within the music industry have different, I guess, timelines or cycles. I mean, like my personal approach is like I like getting the full thing done before we start rolling out, so I can know the full context before we make a music video or before we do like this shoot or that shoot, so I can know what the full thing is. But I think especially in hip hop, I definitely know a lot of stories where like engineers have to work like the night before because the artist just wants like a little change to this vocal or to that thing. And it's like, just get it done and so we're submitting it to the, because they've already announced it and they've publicized when it's coming out. And so it's like, you just have to get this done the night before. So I think it definitely varies.
I feel like even for someone like Kanye, I feel like he always is adjusting his music up until like the very last second. And then he'll reference something on the album that comes out that happened like the day or two before. And it's like, how did you do that? So there's no way he completed the body of work that far in advance. But okay, looking at all the body of works that you've put out, this next one that's coming up with Growing Pains, how would you say you've been able to develop your sound? How would you say you've been able to develop as an artist?
I think the biggest thing for me has been technical growth. Um, I think especially with Fast Love and Growing Pains in the making of it, I think I was getting better at that whole like, because I think I conceptualize a lot where it's like I know what the song is supposed to sound like in my head before I've laid down an instrument, before I've played a chord. Like I know what I want, and now it's like, can I get this idea out into the real world?
Yeah.
And I think honing that skill has definitely been been positive over the last few projects. I think as far as feeling or a more like spiritual connection to the music, I think that's a more recent change. I think part of it's that like self-confidence I was talking about of like, I don't really need people to listen to it anymore because I know when it feels right. Like I
Yeah.
just know when it feels done. I have a much more like a louder inside voice that's like an innate knowledge of the process, which I appreciate.
Do you have a favorite song of yours that you've created?
I think so. I think. Ooh, actually, it is a bit difficult. I think Nina Simone off of The End of the World.
Okay.
That has always been one of my favorites. I think that's one where I took. I was taking some creative risks. Um, I mean, that song is very inspired by Maggot Brain by Funkadelic.
Okay.
And I'm a big fan of that group and that song specifically. But it's like making a 5.5 minute song and then putting a massive like an 8 bar guitar solo like in this as the second verse. It's just a decision that doesn't really get made that often in music today. And I think I made a lot of those little decisions where it's like, oh, like that's not really being done, but it all still serves the central like spiritual theme that I was going for. So definitely every time, even performing it, that's my favorite song to perform because I get into that zone, into that pocket of it.
I'm glad you asked about favorite song to perform because I
mhm.
didn't even plan to ask about performing music, but that's as you were speaking, as you were going through things, I was like, that's actually something I'm also very curious about.
Yeah.
When was your first live show that you did?
First live show. Oh my god. First live show was on Martha's Vineyard.
Okay.
It was it was this like all white party, and it was just like a bunch of people our age, like we're like all people late college. And this guy had just gone before me, and he killed it. He was so good. He did some songs. He was dancing with the crowd. He was killing it. What is it? Oh, Alleman. Yeah.
I don't think so. No.
No, he was cool. He's a great dancer, great singer, like great live performer. So he had the energy up. People were like, yeah, like I was like, fuck, like I am so
I gotta follow
fucked.
this,
You know
yeah.
what I'm saying? I got up there and it's like my first time performing. I was so nervous and like the first no, and also part of the problem. And this was a good learning experience, but like it was a party, so I was like drinking earlier in the day,
Yeah.
and I didn't know that you can't really do that. Like
Yeah.
my voice was just not there because I had been drinking. And I like sung the first note and it was terrible. It was so bad. I was like, wow. I was like, wow, like I'm stuck here. And people just kind of started like, people were like still kind of being supportive and like looking. Some people started like just walking away because it was like the party is like you come see the performer or you can like be at the rest of the party. So some people started dispersing a little.
Yeah.
I did my 2 songs and I was down. I was like, wow, like it was great to learn from. I think that was great to just have under the belt as like it went bad. Now what? And it was like, what can we learn from that? How can it get better? And I think everyone since then has been so much better. I'm just way more, I guess, locked in because of that.
Follow up again. So now you as a performer, how would you describe your sound? Not your sound, your style, your stage presence. How do you approach it nowadays?
Yeah. I think I have always gravitated towards a more personal delivery. Like I'm typically very quiet and I guess I don't interact with the crowd that much. I do a little, but that's not my natural being, and I like to stay in one position, and it helps me the most. I think I sound the best, and the performance shows through the best when it's just me, and I close my eyes, and I get to just deliver it the way I want to deliver it. Especially for some of the slower songs where I have the crowd's attention, and it's not about like moving their body, or it's just about like feeling it. And I think me just being there and like me showing that I'm feeling it is how I like to communicate that. But Dennis does not fuck with that because that is just like it's too.
What does Dennis want you to do?
I think more energy would be nice, and I see the argument. I think it's always helpful to be as engaging as possible when you can. I definitely think it's possible to have both, where I'm both like active and engaging, and also it shows too that I'm feeling it. So I think it's definitely that's one thing I want to change as I perform is be more active and like make the crowd feel like
they're really with me, and they all know me
Yeah.
almost. Even though that's never going to be true, but I think it's like a skill to be able to communicate that, and I think that's something I want to work on.
Yeah, and even just from I'm trying to think through all the concerts that I go to and
Mhm.
what artists do well versus don't do well and
Mhm,
what kind of
mhm.
works well. I do think there is the ability to do both
Mhm.
is important. Like J. Cole's my favorite artist. I've seen him in concert like 4 times.
Mhm.
And he always, again, he'll rap and he'll be all over the stage, blah, blah, blah. But
Mhm.
every time he does Love Heroes, he'll like sit on a little stool, kind of like just talk to the crowd, just like rap in one place, sitting down. And again, he has you kind of in the palm of his hand. And then he could do a song or 2 or 3 like that. But then he'll always go back to like, for the more hype songs, he's jumping up and down.
Mhm.
He's not like a background dancer type of person, but just by himself, he's able to capture a bunch of different emotions just
Yeah.
through the way that he is kind of navigating the stage, whether
Exactly.
it's sitting in one place or jumping all over. And then I've never seen Ed Sheeran in concert, but I've seen videos, and he's also a big like, just kind of sit there with his guitar and just kind of do his own thing. And
But
he
it
could do that a whole
communicates.
show and he could
Yeah.
crush it. So
Yeah.
I see both sides to it.
Mhm, mhm.
But I mean, Dennis is the manager, so you
Yeah.
gotta try what he suggested. Okay, 2 more quick questions before, and not overall,
Mhm.
with the music. Do you have any dream artists to collaborate with?
That's a great question. I think recently, I think honestly that question, like the answer to that would depend on the day.
Fair,
I think
changes.
more recently my answer to that question is Solange.
Okay.
I honestly wasn't super into her because I've like known about her music since high school and kind of been in and out of things, listening to songs here and there. But only recently did I like really get into, especially when I get home, her 2020 or 2019 album.
Okay.
That's just like peak for me right now, and I think she's an amazing artist. So
Okay.
definitely her.
Dream festival to perform at.
Dream Festival, Flogna.
Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, we are manifesting both those things for you. You'll perform with, honestly, you'll perform at Solange at Flock. Bro, look at that.
All right,
We're putting that out.
No,
in
I
the
like
world.
that.
Okay, and then really quickly, because we mentioned that you're creative in a bunch of different ways. Tell all the people what Amoeba Studios is.
Amoeba Studios is a home goods and furniture brand that I'm starting. We just launched like a couple of weeks ago. Right now we have like the first collection out, and we have an ashtray, rolling tray, incense holder, and mancala board that we're selling. All the stuff is like designed by me, and we make it in we have like a basement studio in Bushwick. Yeah, and we're trying to release one more collection before the end of the year.
Nice.
Yeah.
You're just a creative dude, man. All different ways. You can't help yourself.
Yeah,
You just have to create. I respect it.
Exactly.
Okay, with that, Tiana, how long have we done? 47 minutes. Okay. We will bring it to the music identity segment. So I ask my guests to come with 5 songs that describe who they are as a person. I leave it open to interpretation. I'll have you say the song and the reason you chose it. And then honestly, bonus, since you spoke about albums and how you love albums, when you're done with that, if there's an album or 2 or 3 that are particularly special to you, just
I could yap about albums for days.
Fair
actually,
enough.
if you allow me. Let's look at these songs that I picked. Okay, the first song I have on here is "Cuffed" by Nick Hakim.
Okay.
I feel like, I mean, Nick Hakim is one of my favorite artists, who I got to meet, which was insane for me. But this song "Cuffed" was very special to me in high school. I think it's a very like dynamic song that has this massive crescendo and then a lull at the end, and I think that structure is like something about it just resonates with me, and I think I aim for that a lot in my music. That structure of song. But yeah, that resonates a lot with me. The second song is Akula Owu Unyera by the Funkies. And they're this Nigerian rock group from the 70s, I think, 70s, 80s. And it's a song I just found, during COVID, I got really into African rock from like the 70s and 80s. Like a lot of Zambian groups, a lot of Nigerian groups. And this song just stuck out. Like every time I put it on, I just feel...
I'll need to tap into that one. Yeah, I've never heard of it.
No, it's so good. And then Dance Like You by OK Kaya. That's another artist. She's very... I honestly couldn't really put it into words, the space she like occupies as an artist. But all her songs are very... Like you feel her when she's singing or producing or, just putting out music in general. In a way that I don't feel like a lot of people communicate themselves. Because because I think there's a lot of artists where it's like, yeah, no, I feel you're being real, you're communicating, but she manages to do it in a very interesting way. And I really enjoy that. Next one is So Real by Jeff Buckley. And that song is, I just like it.
Fair enough. Sometimes it's that simple.
You know what I'm saying? It's just a good
that
song.
simple.
I think it has
yeah.
really, really cool chords. His delivery on it is very, very cool. And then this last song is a song that came out, I think it came out like last Friday or like 2 Fridays ago. It's Chakra by Len.
Okay.
And Len, I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but he's like UK artist. I think he's Senegalese, Congolese. But he's like based in UK. And he just makes fire stuff. You know, I mean, you know the whole like Odunsi, all them, like Santi, that whole group. He's kind of the next generation over from that, but like the UK underground scene within that. Yeah.
Jim Legacy. Okay, got it. Yeah.
Legacy's cool. Femi Guerrero is also cool in that whole. But Chakra by Len, that's a good song.
Hey, you've given me some stuff to tap into. I love it. Okay, now on the albums, since you spoke about, again, your love for albums, a cohesive body of work being better than a single song, what are some of your favorite albums?
Favorite albums? Definitely like When I Get Home by Solange. I think that project for me is special in the way it communicates so much without much. It's like it's almost low fidelity with the way it's put together. A lot of it was made like by her in her house, just kind of singing casually. And she works with a lot of like producers, but she also produces a lot herself. And she manages to make it feel so cohesive, even when she's working with so many other people. And feel really like her coming through. And throughout it, she says a lot of phrases. She just like repeats a lot of phrases. She'll have like a whole chorus section. It's just the same sentence over and over, and it's a few lines. But I think that repetition allows you to really get into a trance-like state. If you follow her from the beginning to the end of the project and really like allow it to move you, I think it does it in a way that not that many projects do. And also the visual album that came out with that. I don't know if you've ever seen any of it.
No.
Like the best visual, like it could be a standalone movie.
Interesting. Wow.
And all directed by her as well. So and I think it shows because the feeling that I get from the video, even though aesthetically it's a whole different form, like you can't really match two things, but the feeling is exactly the same as the feeling I feel in each of the songs. And I feel like getting to experience an album in that way, like front to back, she made a visual for every single song and put it into a full like movie. I think that's unique and people should do it more. And I definitely want to do that.
Sounds special. Yeah, I will need to tap into that. Okay.
It's amazing. Then the other I could do is...
And I will just even one quick thing. You can always, even hearing you talk about music, it shows just how like inspired you are by it and how deep into the space. Like I can't, when people ask me why I like stuff, I'm like, that's kind of cool. It makes me feel good. I don't have those words you just used to describe how you like it, so it's cool hearing you describe music.
Word. I honestly, I think an album that highlights the way that I feel about music in that like I guess more conscious or like I'm paying attention to details way is To Pimp a Butterfly.
Okay.
Yeah, Kendrick on that. Technically, I mean, obviously I still feel a lot from it, and it's just like the connection is there immediately. But I've actually been like, in my notebook, I'm like analyzing, I still haven't finished, but I'm like analyzing every song and trying to break it down as granular as I can. And the amount of, I guess, interesting decisions being made with the writing, the production, the mixing, the like vocal delivery, especially for Kendrick, like so many of the details that you can consider with music, he's hitting both technically like impressive to the max of his ability, and also doing like weird stuff in every single point of each of those things, which I think, and like when you can do two things at once, I think that seemingly contradict each other, I think that's when you find like magic. That's where like the human soul connects to a thing, because it's just like comprehensive, like it doesn't really make sense, but it connects. And I feel like that project to me does that like to the max.
You know, it's the interest one. Well, there's a lot of different and interesting things about music, but it's so funny how there are artists like a Kendrick who are so kind of deliberate and specific in doing all these different interesting things with their music that probably most people can't appreciate or even realize or capture. But then there's also the other spectrum of things where it's just like the most basic pop artists that just because their music makes you feel good, they also have millions and millions of fans. So I do appreciate that, because that again just speaks to human beings. Not everything needs to be for everyone. Some people are going to listen to Kendrick and love every part of that. Some people are going to listen to Taylor Swift and love every part of that. And there's everything in between. And I'm not mad at anybody who's able to find their audience and appeal to people in that way. Because I won't even lie. I listen to Kendrick. I like Kendrick. I've never been the biggest Kendrick guy. J. Cole's has always been my GOAT.
That's real.
And so, even some of the way you just described To Pimp a Butterfly, some of my really good friends are also huge Kendrick guys, and they'll also speak about all these different intricacies. And I'm like, honestly, I couldn't care less. I can't even lie to you, because like it's that simple. But again, I am never mad at the music appealing to some people in some way and having them kind of see the artist to be this great person that they are, because they're able to appreciate that. That's the beauty of music. There's something for everyone.
Absolutely.
So shout out all the artists.
No, for sure.
All right, that was oh, I forgot my one last segment. Okay, simple one. Well, I'll let you decide if it's simple. But I have my guests kind of manifest life 10 years into the future to the most specific detail possible and where you want to be. It was inspired by this article that I read that asked a bunch of people in their early to mid 20s to kind of do exactly that. And then it had this added component of actually calculating how much they'll need to be making to live that life. But I just love the first part of it, because I'm big on manifestation, putting stuff out into the world. I think your thoughts become things. You kind of need to put things out there and they'll happen. So to the most specific detail possible, in 10 years, where do you want to be? What do you want to be doing?
That's a tough question. That is a tough question.
Yeah, it's not an easy question. It's simple, but it's not easy.
I'm gonna have to lock in. I think in 10 years, I'll definitely still be making music. I think my approach to music, to design, to filmmaking, to all these things, I want to be able to exist in a purely creative space, I think. Right now, a lot of my day is like waking up and handling logistics. It's like, oh, we have to make a music video. Here's a cool idea I have. Okay, now how are we gonna do it? And we have to like coordinate with a bunch of people and like schedule dates and have meetings to organize, and that's like what I spend my time on. And obviously I'm so grateful that I get to wake up and like focus on creating, right? But I think my most ideal scenario is like getting to fully focus on creating. And I see that, and I see myself continuing on with, definitely with music, Amoeba Studios. I want to be making furniture, doing like large scale pieces, and a lot more cool stuff with that as well. Morbid Electronics. Right now we make, I was thinking about it, that's the startup I run with Moye. We make audio plugins, but eventually we want to make like audio hardware and all sorts of cool speakers and beat making machines and all sorts of interesting things. And I definitely want to have made a movie in 10 years.
Fire.
Yeah.
Amazing. So again, we can fast forward in 10 years. Hopefully all this has come true. And you have this moment where you put it all out into the world. But this was a very, very fun episode. I kind of knew.
For me as
and
well.
again, kind of like what I mentioned, these are the fun ones for me. Because again, everyone knows you for your music. This is literally our third time meeting, so I don't even know you that well. But it was cool kind of doing the research and getting to break things down with you. This is kind of why I do this show.
Yeah.
So thanks for coming on.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Do you have any final words for the people? Other than check out the album.
Gotta check out the album. That's really it. That's all that matters right now, October 18th. No, thank you so much for having me. It's a lot of fun. Oh, go buy Amoeba. Go buy Morbid Electronics.
That's why I
Go support. That's his job. That's his job,
all right. Well,
thank you.
Yeah, no, this was fun. This has been another episode of Go With The Flow. Thank you for listening.